Race 2 of the Biathlon World Championships for 2009 just about to get underway. This is the setting in Pyeong Chang. Very little, or in fact no, natural snow to be seen. Yesterday destroyed the tracks that had been prepared, and a team of 500-600 working overnight to lay down 2.5 kilometers of track. They've done an incredibly good job, and here we are under the floodlights preparing for the men's sprint, the second race, and of course the women's sprint going off a little earlier on. Well, we've got a few minutes to spare, so let's catch up with what happened in the women's event. Well, the big favourites, the Germans, after the disqualification of some of the Russians, but it was Zaitsev of Russia who set the early pace, going exceptionally well and shooting clear. At one stage it looked as though they may well dominate the podium finishes. One or two of the skiers having problems with the downhill section. Simone Hausfeld was not amongst them. Half Korean, she was in her element and put out an astonishingly good time. Kari Wilhelm, winner in 2001 of the sprint event, virtually her first major championships. She's done the same in 2009. 10 out of 10 in the range and an exceptionally quick last loop to take the win. Here she is. Emotional moments for Wilhelm. Hausfeld immensely proud with her achievement. Zaitsev in the bronze medal position. Well, nice to see. It means just as much for Kari Wilhelm. There she is, 21:11.1, the winning time over the 7.5 kilometers. Hausfeld second, Zaitsev, a bronze medal, just 27 seconds behind. Bulligina and Jonsson 4 and 5. Great run from Helene Jonsson, consistent as ever, the best of those to have missed a target on the day. Henkel, the reigning champion, or the former reigning champion, forced down into 6th place with 2 mistakes on the range. Martina Beck well below par, and Tora Berger of Norway also well outside her top position. We were expecting to see her in the top 5, but she finished just inside the top 20 today. So the women's race over and done with. They'll now think about the pursuit, which takes place tomorrow, and be hoping for better conditions. The men's race due off in around 10 minutes time. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with the build-up for the first of the men's World Championship races. Well, everyone going through the warm-up process for the men's sprint over a distance of 10 kilometres. And with only a 2.5 kilometre track, they'll ski the loop once, shoot for the first time in the pro, and then ski 2 laps. One of the favourites, of course, is Ole Einar Bjorndalen, the 5-time overall World Cup champion. He's also got 5 Olympic golds to his collection, 10 gold medals from the World Championships, 83 wins at World Cup level, chasing down that 86 from Ingemar Stenmark. But what on earth keeps him motivated in these situations? He says what he really enjoys is pushing his body to the limit, finding new ways to train, both physically and technically. He tries to find more extreme ways to improve his performance, and that's what he finds interesting, is the actual development of his body and performances. Well, in the Olympic Games in Salt Lake City, he was in a class of his own. 4 gold medals out of a possible 4. There was no stopping him here. So what's the difference between then and now? Well, he says he hopes there isn't so much difference at all. Perhaps he has a bit more experience. He says he was incredibly good in 2002 compared to the other biathletes. So if it went well, he knew he was going to win by some margin. Nowadays, there are more people to compete. Well, with a number of up-and-coming stars like Emil Hegler Svensson, he's now having to cope with losing as well as winning. Svensson saying that Bjorndalen is still his hero, and he thinks he will be for a long time. Svensson saying he tries to ski like him, he tries to shoot like him, he tries to train the same way, and he has to say that Bjorndalen has taught him pretty much everything he knows. So Bjorndalen saying he's so good that doesn't really have to look at anyone else. These two, of course, involved in good sprint finishes last year in the World Championships in Östersund. Bjørn Dalen says that the most difficult thing when you've lost a race to someone like Svensson is what happens afterwards. The people you meet, the press, everyone wants to talk about being beaten and how you cope with being beaten when you've won so often. The actual losing isn't so difficult. It's the after effects that he's struggling with. Well, the Olympic Games in Vancouver will be Bjørn Dalen's 5th. He's known for being very systematic, very thorough with his testing of the equipment. And his preparation for Vancouver has already started. In fact, when he finished in 2006 in Torino, he said, after the last race in Torino, I sat down for 12 hours with my coach, Robert Gruben. We made a strategy, and we've been following this plan all the way through. So Bjørn Dalen's main goal for this season are the World Championships, to get medals from there and prepare for next winter's Olympics. Says it's difficult to talk about medals, but if he can get a couple, that would be great. Well, he's already written biathlon history, and he's now amongst the veterans, but does the age get in the way as he approaches 40? He says he feels stronger than ever. He says he doesn't think that 34 years is limiting his performance at all. In fact, he takes that as an advantage. Well, that's good news for all of the older viewers and all of the older biathletes out there. So Bjørn Dalen will be going all out to take the victory, and one bit of news has made his job a little bit easier. Emil Hegler Svensson has not entered the race. Well, he was in, but he's withdrawn because he's suffering from what sound to be flu-y symptoms. He's got a heavy cold, but he's also getting shivers, and he's got pain all over his body. So not good news for Svensson. He'll miss today's race, and he will also miss the pursuit tomorrow. So that really does improve Bjørn Dalen's chances. It improves everyone else's chances, because Svensson has been the out-and-out star in the sprints so far this season, with 3 victories out of a possible 6. Well, the wind has picked up, and that will favour the better shots in the squad. We'll see how Bjørn Dalen gets on in these sort of tricky situations. The skiing we've already seen is very tough. Thomas Sikora might fancy his chances. Here's Thomas saying, this season is the best of my career so far. In the previous seasons, he's always had a few problems. Always had a few problems following the routine that he's wanted to follow. Talking about the favourites, he says there are lots of favourites in the field. The Norwegians, the Russians, there are a lot of us. But he's happy that he is amongst those who can be figured as a favourite for today's race, and he certainly is, because Sikora is lying second in the World Cup standings to Emil Hegler Svensson, and with Svensson out, he's got a chance to close down the gap. Well, here's the lap, exactly the same as we saw for the women's race. One big climb of 23 metres and some very fast downhills indeed. We'll take another quick break. We'll be back with the start, which is due off in just a couple of minutes. The fans waiting for the start of the men's sprint. I can tell you that there's a field of 123, so 13 more than we had in the women's race. Each of the nations entitled to enter 4 athletes. So the field, in some cases, bigger than the World Cup. But it's fair to say that it is easier to get a top 20 position in the World Championships than it is in the World Cup, simply because even the top teams are limited to 4 entries, and only the team with the world champion can enter 5. And that means that Russia have 5. They've had to scrape the barrel a bit because Eroshenko, who was right up there in the top of the rankings of the World Cup, has been eliminated from the start sheet because of the doping scandal that was exposed here just a couple of days ago. And if you missed that earlier on, 3 of the Russians, 2 women, and Eroshenko himself have been found guilty of doping. Their B sample has been found positive, and it was from all the way back in Östersund, which was the very first World Cup of the season. So slightly surprising that it's taken so long to process these things. But they haven't declared what the drug is, and they're certainly not going to declare how they tested for it. So it all sounds like a little bit of espionage at the moment. We'll keep you informed with the story as it builds. and I think we'll be hearing a lot more about it as the events go on. Sad news to start the World Championships here in Korea. On the other side, great news for Simone Hausvold, of course, with a South Korean mother. She is as close as they're going to come to getting a medal, and she's already got one, a silver in the women's race. Brilliant start, and hopefully that means that there'll be a lot more fans here tomorrow for the pursuit events. Well, if the weather stays reasonable, the forecast is for the skies to clear, the temperature to drop, and the wind to ease off as well. Very rare to get strong winds at this time of year in Pyeong Chang. "37 nations in all represented out here at the Biathlon World Championships. The big ones you will know about: the Russias, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Belarus, of course. But amongst them you have to watch out for Poland with Tomasz Sikora. I think he's the best chance. The USA have a couple of very talented biathletes if they can just get it together on the big day. And today is that big day. Day one of the Biathlon World Championships here in Korea, Pyeong Chang hosting the event for the first ever time. The first time the championships have been held in Asia. And a big buzz around the stadium over the last week. Everyone getting new to unfamiliar cultural practices. And of course the diet, something I've been handed a long list with all the national plates, but I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce them or describe them. But certainly one or two of the athletes wishing they'd brought their own chefs along just so they're familiar with the food. In fact, the big teams have done exactly that, and it's not that they don't enjoy the Korean food, it's that they want to eat what they're familiar with. They can't afford to have stomach upsets on the day of a big race. Yevgeny Abraменko of Belarus is going to be the first away. The 21-year-old Klaus Siebert has been responsible for bringing on the Belarus team this year. He was bitterly disappointed with some of the performances in the women's race earlier on today. Let's see if Abraменko can do a little bit better. He's got good conditions. The track, certainly an advantage, or it seemed to be an advantage to go early in the women's race. As you can see, the pista has not really done anything with the tracks. In fact, it's done absolutely nothing with the tracks. I think they decided it would do more damage than good to send the Peace and Bully round, and that's because the snow is so soft. So Abraменko may just get the best, the fastest of the conditions today, although it is expected to cool down as the race goes on. Oleana Bjorndalen, one of the favourites, goes off number 122 out of a field of 123. So he will certainly keep the race alive. Thomas Holubets of the Czech Republic going second, 33-year-old mechanic. Didn't race in the World Championships last year in Östersund. He's been around for a while. René Laurent Villemot of Italy. Now, the Italians look good in Antolz, but they always produce their best performances there on home snow. He's got a problem with a standing shoot. He's got a problem with a start. That's a couple of seconds thrown away. Just needs to forget about that and just settle down into an easy rhythm. That can always happen when the snow is soft. And Villemot, as I mentioned, 65% hit rate in the stand. He's got to improve on that today if he wants to feature in the top 10. Most of the big names going in Group